Ladies and gentlemen, this is Scott Pollack, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Welcome to another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report. Thanks again for tuning us in, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate it. This edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report is coming to you live or almost live from the capital of the Midwest Coast, Chicago, Illinois, USA. This is part 3 of the Definitive Bullet Point series regarding the mass shootings at Mandalay Bay.
I want to talk about are the autopsies, and anytime if you're a real investigator and you're doing a homicide investigation, the first thing you start with is the autopsies, because that is proof of the crime of murder. So those autopsies were released, as I said, redacted in the end of January for the 58 victims. So we went through these with a fine-tooth comb probably for 30 to 45 days. And the interesting part of these autopsies, well, there was a lot of interesting things, but one of the things that stuck out to me when I first started reviewing these is they used 6 different pathologists, but of the 6, 4 of them were from outside. So they only used 2 Clark County pathologists in this review, and they used 4 from outside. One was from, I believe, Florida, one was from Michigan, one was from the Midwest, Kansas maybe, or Nebraska, and the other one was from California.
And this calls into question the possession of the chain of evidence.
Well, the chain of evidence is one of the issues that I wanted to talk about and really in a quick synopsis explanation. This is the chain of evidence that you employ when you're the coroner. Is you go to the scene of the crime, you take control of the body, you put it in a body bag, you seal that body bag, you put a tag on that, and that seal is not broken until the body gets to the morgue and gets to the autopsy suite, where the pathologist then breaks the seal on that body bag, opens the body bag. They take pictures of the body bag before the seal is broken. They break the seal, they unzip it, they take a picture then with the body still in it. Then they take the body out, and then they take all their pictures. And so anyway, of the 58 victims, there was no chain of evidence indicated on 42 of the 58. So problematic right from the beginning. Then another thing that we noticed was that of the 58 autopsied, 40 were described as being naked at the time that the the pathologist first viewed the body. There were 16 autopsy reports where it wasn't clear whether the body was naked or not. However, they did describe it as the body was received with certain articles of clothing that they described, but they didn't say the body was clothed, nor did they say it was naked. So we've got 40 for sure where they said it was naked, that body was naked. We have 16 where it's unsure, and of the 58 autopsies, we only have 2 where we're positive that the body came clothed in their clothes, and that was indicated by the pathologist in his report. Now,
when you say we, excuse me for interrupting, when you say we, how many people were involved in helping you with this?
At that point in time, we had 3 people involved.
Okay.
Okay. Now, and that's a good time to interject. These autopsy reports were redacted, so we didn't have the names. We didn't have an identification on them. So we endeavored, and one of the 3 people endeavored to identify all 58 victims, and I believe we have done that. And we had certain techniques that we used to do that. The manner the coroner did in December, as I mentioned earlier, released the list of the names and the manner of death, and he gave some detail as far as gunshot wounds, as far as where the gunshot wounds were. Of course, we knew male and female, so we were able to do that. And I believe that we've identified all 58 victims. So I just wanted to interject that. Now, of the 58 victims, the autopsies indicate that 38 were fingerprinted. Now, typically all bodies are fingerprinted. Sometimes you're not able to match the fingerprints to records because the person has never been fingerprinted before. But there were 38 of the 58 indicated there were fingerprints. On 3 of the autopsies, they did not give a date of death. On 26, they did not give a time of death. And 14 did not contain a time of the autopsy. Then we have ballistics, bullet fragments, either whole bullets or fragments of bullets were recovered from 46 of the 58 victims. And the other 12 essentially were, I guess, what you would call through and through wounds, where the bullet passed completely through and did not leave any fragments. So 46 out of 58 is a pretty high number. 21 of the 58 victims sustained other injuries, which were detailed in the autopsies, and they were pretty wide-ranging, pretty interesting additional injuries. Internal exams. Now, the internal exams, an autopsy, you do several different exams on the body. You take pictures, you do x-rays, you do toxicology, you do what they call histology, which is a study of the organs and some of the what do I want to say, the tissue of some of the organs. You also have ballistics. And then you have a visual external exam where the pathologist describes, they'll describe the hair color, the eye color, whether there's tattoos, whether there's surgical scars, whether there's evidence of medical intervention. They will describe the physical, what they call the physical part of the body in relation to what they see visually. Then they will do the Y incision, where they will cut the body open and they will do an internal exam. Of the 58 bodies that were autopsied, only 25 had internal exams. The other 33 did not have internal exams. In the strictest application of an autopsy, that would not be considered a full autopsy if you don't do internal exams on 33. The next issue that we looked at was rigor mortis. Rigor mortis was described as being present in 29 of the 58 victims, or half of the victims. The other 29, it was described as either minimal, or it was absent, or it had passed. 23 had no rigor mortis. Of the 29, 23 had no rigor mortis. The other 6 had minimal rigor mortis. Now, if you go look up rigor mortis, and this has been a sort of it's not a clear-cut issue. Typically, rigor mortis starts to set in pretty soon after death. Then it takes 24 to 48 hours to set in and be fixed, and then another 24 to basically recede to the point where there's no rigor mortis at all. So if you think about that time frame, and it's a rough time frame, there are some things that affect that. That's the condition of the body, the temperature, and some other things. But essentially, rigor mortis should be passed no matter what within 72 to 80, 84, 86 hours. So we looked at the rigor mortis because the day to death for the victims ranged from 10:30 on the night of October 1st, Sunday night, all the way. I think the last person expired early in the morning on the 3rd. All these autopsies were finished by the 5th of October. Paddock's was the last one they did, and that was done on the 6th. So as you can quickly do the math, you can tell that most of these autopsies were done within 72 hours. I mean, most of them were, and there were some that were done within 20 hours, within 15 hours. And so we had some instances where, based on the autopsies, that the victim had been deceased for 70 to 72 hours. Their body was still in rigor mortis, yet we had other victims where they were deceased for 30, 36 hours, 38 hours, and they did not have rigor mortis. So we found that to be very, very interesting, and given all the other information I've given here with no chain of custody on the majority of them, and they came in naked, no internal exams, I mean, it just leaves a great deal of questions.
Again, this is Scott Pollack, Chief Editor of the Critical Post Chicago, reporting. Thanks again for watching another edition of the Critical Post Chicago Report, coming to you live or almost live from the capital of the Midwest Coast, Chicago, Illinois, USA. That is all.